This is Join Us in France, episode 460, 460. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we talk about France. Everyday life in France, great places to visit in France, French culture, history, gastronomy, and news related to travel to France. Today, I bring you a trip report with Jessica Kosmak about the Grand Prix experience. That's the Grand Prix de Monaco, of course. So, vroom, vroom. We'll talk about a world-famous car race this week again. About 200,000 people attend the race every year. It's very popular. Jessica was on episode 219 and 220 of the podcast a few years back to share photography tips, and she's back to explain this whole Grand Prix de Monaco. To give you just a bit of background on the Grand Prix, let's go back to the early 20th century, and cars were all the rage. Everyone was excited about them, and naturally, people wanted to race. That's where the idea of the Grand Prix comes into play. The word Grand Prix literally means grand prize in French, and it was the prize for winning these races. The first ever Grand Prix took place in France in 1906. It was a massive event with cars racing from Le Mans to La Ferté-Bernard to Saint-Calais and back to Le Mans. It was a long thing at the time. It was a grueling race, but it set the stage for what was to come. As the years went by, the Grand Prix evolved. The races became more structured with specific rules and regulations. The cars got faster, a lot faster. The tracks got more sophisticated. By the end of the middle of the 20th century, Formula One was established as the premier class of single-seater racing, and the F1 World Championship began in 1950. One of the most iconic races, the Monaco Grand Prix, started in 1929. So racing through the streets of Monaco, it's like the jewel in the crown of the F1 calendar. Tight corners, glitzy surroundings, and a harbor full of yachts, it's as glamorous as racing gets. The Grand Prix has seen its share of triumphs, tragedies, yes, many tragedies, innovations, and controversies. Today, the Grand Prix is a global phenomenon with races from Australia to Abu Dhabi. It's not just about speed, it's about strategy, teamwork, and pushing the limits of what's possible on four wheels. From its humble beginnings in France to the global spectacle it is today, it has been quite the ride for the Grand Prix. And I think electric cars are only going to make it better. But that's just me. I'm definitely in the electric car camp. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service, my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the Voice Map app, or you can take a day trip with me around the southwest of France in my very own electric car at a perfectly reasonable speed, just in case you were wondering. You can browse all of that on my boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. Paul sent me this note this week. Dear Annie, we are in our last couple of days in Paris and just wanted to say how much we enjoyed and loved your Voice Map tours. We did all of them, purchased through the app, and they made our stay so much more enjoyable. Loved all the historic info and your great sense of humor. We have already recommended them strongly to other friends. Many thanks from a very long time Join Us in France podcast listener. Warm regards, Paul. Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate that. And yes, I think Voice Map is a great way to experience a city. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. For the magazine part of the podcast, after the interview today, I'll keep it short because you might hear that my voice is different today. Well, my husband and I went to Geneva for his birthday. We didn't wear masks, and I caught COVID. I tested positive today on a home test, and I went to do a PCR test at a lab nearby. They'll confirm tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure that's what I have because I couldn't smell the coffee or much of anything else this morning. So I have aches all over, headaches. I'm not prone to headaches, thankfully, but it's just aches everywhere. And that's despite taking acetaminophen as recommended. I'm not sure it works that well, but oh well. It was bound to happen sooner or later, and I have 4 doses of vaccine in me, so it's probably going to be okay. It shall pass. I'll see if my doctor wants to prescribe Paxlovid tomorrow when I see her. But I will talk about my experience in Geneva, a very cool city, after the interview. Bonjour, Jessica Kosmak, and welcome back to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie. Thank you for having me back.
Wonderful to have you back. You went to the Monaco Grand Prix. That is so exciting. I've never been. I want to hear all about this.
Yes, we did. It was a big bucket list trip. It was my husband's 50th birthday this year, and he's a lifelong F1 racing fan. And so we thought, why not start with the biggest and glitziest and most glamorous race? We booked our tickets almost a year in advance as soon as they went on sale, and also booked our accommodation almost at the same time. We just didn't know how crazy things would be, and we were right to do all of those things because it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it attracts a lot of people, doesn't it? Had you been to Monaco before?
I had been to Monaco back when I was a backpacking student in 1999 and had no money. I mean, I still sort of felt like we had no money this time too, but it was...
Well, compared to a lot of people there, it's hard to feel like you have money, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was my second time in Monaco, but I have to say it was really neat seeing it both times, in that the first time I was there, it was late September. The city was open to just walk around. This time, everything was set up for a race weekend. So there was a lot cordoned off, but I didn't feel like we were missing anything because I'd seen it the other way before.
So this is probably a stupid question, but you have to buy tickets to this, right? This is not like the Tour de France where you can just show up on the side and watch it.
You definitely have to buy tickets. What I will say is that for a race like Monaco, and there's other city races that are part of the F1 circuit, city races in particular, my experience in Monaco, there were definitely a lot of people there who I don't think had tickets. And they were just there to soak up the atmosphere of Monaco that weekend. You can definitely feel the vibe. You can hear the cars. Monaco's not that big. Yeah, so you can hear the cars, but you cannot really see them. They do a pretty amazing job of blocking every possible view. They want to charge for every view. What I will say is on the sort of practice days, so on Thursday and Friday, you could go up to the old part of Monaco around the Prince's Palace there. And there's sort of a lookout over the port, and you can see the track from way up there. And that was not blocked off. So you could see that. But we did go up on race day to see if we could watch some of the stuff. No, that became a ticketed area on race day.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you get your ticket, it tells you go to this address or something, go to door number something.
So when you order your tickets, you pick where you want to sit. So there's grandstands, and they give you, the F1 website is great. It tells you exactly what your view is going to be. It tells you a description of the race course in that particular spot. So it can really help you decide where you want to sit.
Yeah.
We decided for this race, because Monaco is, of course, the most expensive ticket on the racetrack schedule. So we decided that we would buy tickets for qualifying. So that is on the Saturday. And Monaco, if you don't know F1, Monaco is kind of what many people think is kind of a boring race because it's such a tight track. The cars are really big. And so there's not a lot of changes in the order of the race that happen on race day, but a lot happens in qualifying.
Uh-huh.
So we decided to buy qualifying day tickets, which also had the advantage of being quite a bit less money. But we decided to splurge on sort of the most iconic seats. So we sat in the grandstands that faced the casino and the Hotel de Paris and the Mediterranean and the yachts going by in the background. So it was a beautiful spot to watch. And so our ticket gave us access to that zone area only. If you had tickets for maybe down by the harbor or just in one of the other sections, you could not get in unless you had the right ticket.
Oh, that's very good to know.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so now you have your ticket. How long do you spend there? When you arrive, there's probably security, I'm sure.
Actually, there's not security to get into Monaco. There's security to get into your zoned area and some of the other areas. Like there's a really fun fan zone where a lot of the drivers will come and do interviews throughout the weekend. And we went there a few times, and every time they're checking your bags, but no long lineups for that. And no long lineups really to get into the ticketed zone. So that was good. So I'll step back. We decided to stay in Nice because I didn't even consider staying in Monaco. It just seemed...
The dollar signs were too many.
Yeah. And even when we went, so we stayed in an Airbnb in Nice. And when we booked that, I think we booked maybe 9-10 months in advance. Even then, you know how when you're booking on Airbnb, it says, 30% of properties are booked for this time or something like this. Like ours, even almost a year out, said that there was very few properties remaining. So a lot of people are already booking well in advance for that weekend. But we found a great place, and I can talk more about that, our apartment later. But it was good to have a place that was maybe not as consumed by the Monaco race weekend to come back to. It was fun to go walk around Nice. And so that was great. So we stayed in Nice. Our host gave us the rundown of which train stations to access that would get us into Monaco. So the first morning we went in on Friday morning just to walk around. We wanted to see what it was like. And we went to the train station. So there's
Niceville.
Yeah, the main train station. We went to the one just after, so one stop closer to Monaco.
I can't remember what it's called, but there's only 2 of them, I think.
There's only 2. No, I think there's one more by the airport, closer to the airport.
Oh, now they have a tram station.
Yeah. So anyway, we went to that one stop closer to Monaco. We went around 10 in the morning, and every train that was coming in was already packed. Like people pressed to the window on the inside.
Oh, dear.
The platform was very busy. And the conductors, though, were really great. And they, a train would come in and they would start telling people, oh, there's space here up at the front or there's space at the back. And so we managed to get on the second train. And then every day after that, we figured we're just going to go to the main train station and get on because we'll have a better shot of getting on the train from the beginning. And that worked out just fine.
Yeah, that's how it was. Yeah.
So on that first day, we went in around 10 in the morning and we stayed until 5 in the afternoon. We just were having the best time, and we kind of just committed our whole weekend. That was the first part of our trip, to immersing ourselves in the race and not trying to do too much else. So yeah, it was just hearing the loud cars. I didn't even think I was going to be this into it, but I loved hearing the cars. I loved seeing everyone walking around in all of their different team paraphernalia.
Did your husband have a team he was rooting for?
He's had a team. He's always rooted for McLaren. So we spent a long time walking around the different, merchandise booths that are set up. They're kind of just set up on streets in Monaco, which is really cool. So you feel like, what I was going to say is a city race is really cool that way, because when you're not watching the race, you're just in the city that you're in. And so you get to enjoy the restaurants and the, just takeaway sandwiches, the same way you would if you were just there on a non-race weekend. So yeah, it was much more exciting to just feel like you were a part of something than I thought it would be, even though we couldn't get down to the port. We couldn't get down and see the big yachts, but we could see them up in the old Monacoville part of town. So
yes. So for that whole weekend, everything is blocked off. Like you just go to where you got your tickets for, and that's it.
Yeah, you can walk around the city, but you can't get anywhere near the track and expect to see something. You can actually be right beside the track and hear it, but there's a big barrier wall blocking your view. And so just be prepared for that. People were trying. I have a really funny picture of a woman holding her husband up on a very precarious railing, and because he was trying to see above the barrier. People would try, but really, you just can't. You can't. And so if you just embrace that and enjoy the other stuff that there is to see. And a lot of the restaurants had TVs out. So you could be sitting hearing the real life sound of the cars, and they have the footage on TV.
Fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun.
That's excellent. So can you still go into the cathedral and the palace and things like that? Can you do other things?
Yeah, it all seemed to be open.
Yeah.
We couldn't figure out how to get into the casino just because I'm sure there was some weird circuitous route to get there. And it's not the normal way you would get in.
Yeah.
But I do know we met a guy on the train one morning and he said he'd been at the casino the night before. So I do know everything else seemed to be open. There was definitely tourists there just looking at the other stuff, going up to the palace, and all of the churches were open, and people were just going about their...
Yeah, just enjoying their day in Monaco. Yeah. So did you find, well, I was going to ask you if the prices for restaurants and things were inflated, but you would have no way to know that because you weren't there.
It was hard to tell. We didn't really eat a restaurant meal while we were there. We kind of just did the snacking or cafe or takeaway sandwich route.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably inflated, but not horribly. It didn't seem horribly out of line.
Did you have a hard time finding places to buy food?
No big lines.
Okay.
And even, the classic, going to the grocery store option exists in Monaco. So we did that. The good thing with the race was they let you bring in food and drinks. So we actually went to the grocery store and stocked up on water, and you just couldn't bring in glass bottles or alcohol. So if you brought, bottled juice or pop or water and snacks, that was all allowed. So that was great.
Did they even sell food once you entered the area?
They did. There was a little, food and beverage spot so you didn't leave your zoned area. Mm-hmm. I think that's where the prices were high.
Yeah.
And I think most people were using that if they wanted a beer or something like that, because that was the only place you could have a drink and still be part of the race. Yeah.
Right. Because they would sell you one in a plastic cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a paper cup or whatever it is. So are you normally a Formula One fan or...
So like I said, my husband's a huge fan. It's always on in our house every weekend that there's a race. And I kind of just, I don't know, didn't really pay attention for many, many years. But then I decided before this trip, I'm going to enjoy it a lot more if I know what's going on. So I binged all 5 seasons of Drive to Survive on Netflix, which I highly recommend watching. It's very, very good.
They do a good job with those shows, don't they?
I heard you talking about the Tour de France version on Netflix. It's the same thing.
Exactly. It's similar. It's exciting. The way they cut up the story and they slice in the people and it's great.
So that really helped get my interest going. And then as soon as we were in Monaco and I heard those cars, that did it for me. So now I'm obsessed. I'm converted, Annie. I'm a full F1 fan now. Yeah.
Next time you go, you'll have full regalia.
Full. Oh, I already got some. I bought some.
There you go. You're ready to go.
I bought some. That was inflated pricing, the merchandise, but whatever. When in Rome, you just do it.
So did you have tickets for one event or more than one event?
So you buy tickets. So you can spend as much money as you want. I'm sure you know. Like, of course. You could buy the full weekend package. That was completely out of our range. I mean, you can have tickets. You can have track.
Are you talking 1,000, 10,000? What?
So we saw for the full weekend, like track, paddock access and everything, $14,000 per person.
Okay. That's, yeah.
So our tickets, and I don't mind sharing, our tickets for one day for the qualifying were $600 Canadian each. So for the race day, they were more than double that. But that doesn't just get you the one event. So you actually, and I didn't realize this when we bought the tickets, you get a whole day's worth of events. So they have Formula One is the big, the tier 1, but then there's Formula 2 and Formula 3 races, practices, qualifying. We saw a Formula 1 qualifying session that day. We saw Formula 2 and 3 qualifying or races. I don't remember. There's Porsche races. So completely just different Porsches. Vehicles. Yeah, just Porsches. So I think we saw one tour of that. So there's stuff happening from about 11 in the morning until the qualifying is over around 5. There's stuff happening almost like every hour. So that was awesome. You feel like your expensive ticket it's covering a whole day. So it was worth it. Yeah.
It's important to mention for people who don't know that you cannot take an Uber into Monaco. So the train is, just plan on taking the train. I don't know what parking was like that weekend, but it probably was no bueno. It's no bueno most of the time. So I would not venture to drive myself in there, especially that weekend.
The roads were clogged the whole time we were there. I can't imagine driving. I think so many routes are closed off. So it becomes just really impossible to get around.
Well, there's not that many roads that lead to Monaco, really. I mean, you can come from Italy, you can come from La Turbie, which is La Turbie, and then from the coast. That's it. I think there's 3 ways in there, and that's it.
So we took the train in. I will say what I didn't even know to think about it, but I did not anticipate how difficult it would be to get out of Monaco every day. So everyone comes in sort of, over a several hour period in the morning, but then everyone leaves at the same time.
Yeah, when it's done, they want to go back. Yeah.
Friday night was fine because there was no big events, but Saturday and Sunday, we weren't even watching the race in Monaco. We were in Cap d'Aille next door. But both of those days, it took us over 2 hours to get back to Nice. The train lines were so long, Annie. I have no idea where the ends were. And so after seeing the lines, we decided to just take the bus because we'd heard that the bus, even though it's longer, is like longer if everything's running on time. It's actually a beautiful option. And it goes right along the coast the whole way. And it takes maybe an hour instead of 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And even though we still had to wait for that, we got on a bus both evenings eventually and got a seat, and it's air conditioned.
Yeah, so it was more comfortable than being packed in a train.
And I just don't know how long we would have waited. The lines were seriously unbelievable. And so on the race day, we actually took the bus back into Monaco so that we would be assured a seat to continue back. So we looped all the way back in and came around. The driver was so confused by what we were doing.
Did he make you pay for 2 tickets?
He did, and I didn't know that. It was still cheap. It was still, yeah. He didn't yell at us, but he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Have you seen the traffic and the lines?" And anyway, it was fine because we had a seat the whole time, and we were tired at the end of that day.
Of course. And when in Monaco, even if you can't walk around all over the place, it's very hilly. There's stairs everywhere. It's a bit of a walk to get anywhere in Monaco.
Yeah, those were big walking days, that whole weekend.
So last question about the race. Did McLaren do well? I have no idea.
They did not.
Okay.
But my team is Alpine. They're the French team.
Yeah, Renault Alpine, yes.
And their driver, Esteban Ocon, he came in 3rd, and that was his best finish this whole season. So I like to think I was his good luck charm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of these days, they're going to do electric car races on those tracks. And that's where I might be convinced to go take a look. Because I like car engines, but the sound of an electric motor, I love that.
Well, and these cars are hybrids, so they're I'm told, a lot quieter than what they were, 30 years ago.
Is that right?
And the F1 cars are significantly quieter than even the F2 and F3 cars, which don't use the full hybrid engine. So the hybrid engine it's already,
it's here, yeah.
I mean, it's already quieter. It's not quiet, but it's quieter. We didn't need earplugs in the stands. I'll say that.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, electric cars would just bomb it out of there so fast. Acceleration on a basic electric car is better than in a gas car. So I assume there'd be little bombs. I don't know.
It'd be really interesting. It's evolving all the time, the industry. I know they are interested in being They talk a lot about net zero. So their carbon footprint is something that is on their mind, even though it's not, it doesn't come across as a very environmentally friendly sport, but they are doing what they can.
In France, you have to. You really have to. Earlier today, I was listening to an interview with the people who run the caravan at the Tour de France. And the guy repeatedly said, it's not the caravan that has 1,000 cars or something. That is the problem. It's all the people coming to the Tour de France. I'm like, dude, yeah, just admit it, okay? We've been doing this forever. It'll be fine. Eventually, it'll change. But for now, that's where we are. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about your Airbnb in Nice and the things you did around this weekend.
Sure. So our Airbnb was in the port area, which I had been to Nice maybe 20 years ago. I feel like I only really visited the old part of Nice with the winding streets and maybe went to the port briefly, but we stayed right there. And I have to say, it was such a great location. It's quieter than the old city.
Because it's on the other side of the rock.
It's on the other side, but it's, within 10 minutes, you can be in the old city. For connections to the tram and the bus, it was both dropped or picked up right in the heart of the port. So it was a 3-minute walk from our apartment. So that was perfect. And we took the tram from the airport because we'd flown from Paris down to Nice, and we took the tram from the airport and it dropped us right there. So that was good because we had our suitcases and stuff. Our host was just incredible. He was so communicative beforehand, sent us stuff about the local area, restaurants, asked what we were doing, knew kind of right away, actually asked when we booked. He said, just by chance, are you coming for the race? Because he looked at the dates of our booking.
Yeah.
And so he actually helped us find and book a beautiful beach lunch in Cap d'Aille on the race day. So we watched the race from a restaurant that he called ahead, asked if they were going to have a TV set up, made our reservation for us. He was just lovely.
And Cap d'Aille is a lovely place.
So pretty. Yeah. We actually said if we went to the race again, we would consider staying there because we walked from Monaco to Cap d'Aille and it took 20 minutes. And so you could, if you stayed there, and it felt, it's right next to Monaco, but it felt like this beautiful little sleepy Mediterranean town. It was lovely. So our host was just great because he did all this extra stuff for us.
So I know that from La Turbie and Monaco, there is a road and it's not that far, but there are no sidewalks. Are there sidewalks between Cap d'Aille and Monaco?
No, we kind of walked, I don't know, we were down really close to the water and kind of just walking in behind, beach apartments, stuff like that.
Okay.
It wasn't busy. We weren't on a busy road. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
We just Google mapped it, I think, and that's the route it told us to go, and it worked out great.
It worked. That's excellent. Very good.
So yeah, our apartment was little, but it was just the two of us. It had a Murphy bed, so a pull-down Murphy bed, but a little balcony and a full kitchen, lovely bathroom, and it was perfect. I mean, we were zonked by the end of every day. But we did make a point. We'd come back from Monaco and then we'd go out for dinner. We went into Old Nice. We did on our first day on the Thursday before we even went to Monaco, we did the full sort of Nice boardwalk. We went up the Colline de Château, which I don't think I've ever done that. It was so pretty up there. So our apartment was right on the other side, like on one side of the colline. So we walked all the way up and then down the other side and then did the whole boardwalk. And then into Old Nice. We were so tired that day, but
yeah, that is a long walk.
It's a long walk.
So I know there is an elevator on the Nice side to avoid the steps up to the colline.
Yes.
But I don't know if there is one on the port side.
I did not see one, but there may have been one. We didn't even look.
Yeah, you just walked it. Yeah.
We were literally at the base of the long sort of climb to get up. So we decided to just go for it. But yeah, again, we had no specific things we wanted to see in Nice, other than I wanted to go back to the boardwalk because I hadn't been there in over 20 years and see if all the blue chairs are still there. And yes, of course they are.
Yes.
Had some great gelato and Yeah, a couple of good meals in Nice. The weather was lovely. It was such a nice time to travel. We were there the end of May, beginning of June.
Right. Perhaps some people don't know when the Grand Prix is, but that's when it is. Yeah.
Yes. So we were in Nice and Monaco the end of May, and it was perfect because it was not super busy. It was busy, but not super. I can imagine how much busier it would be. The weather was perfect. It cooled down at night, but it was still in the low mid 20s during the day. I would highly recommend that time to visit France just because it's slightly off season, but you benefit from summer weather still.
That's true. That's true. So your Airbnb person sent you to some restaurants. Do you have one that you can recommend that other people should check out?
One of the ones, so he had this great, printed book with recommendations that was in the Airbnb. A lot of them do that. I hadn't looked at it, but we'd found this restaurant on our own. And then I went back and looked in the book, and sure enough, he'd recommended it as well. Just a little pizza place, sort of on the far side of the port. It definitely was not, you wouldn't stumble across it as a just tourist because you probably wouldn't go over to that spot. And everyone there was definitely a local. And yeah, it was great. It was just good wood-fired pizza. It was called Made in Sud, so a bit of a franglais title. But yeah, it was great. We were there. We kind of just had a very lingering dinner there, which I love.
So, it's a French place when they use English wrong. So if you have apostrophes in the wrong place.
Yes.
Or, just something completely, then it's French people. They just want to be fancy, but
Made in Sud makes no sense.
They just don't know. So it's okay.
Yeah. But it was really good. And when I told our host, David, that we'd gone there, he said, "Oh, you found the best pizza place in all of Nice." So
yes, perhaps it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that area, I don't remember the name of that church, but by the port, there's a church. Don't know if you had a chance to go into it.
We didn't. No.
I'm pretty sure it's in that church that I saw a piece of Joan of Arc being burned alive. She's not on a horse. She's not carrying the flag. She's surrounded by wood and about to be burned.
Wow.
That is not the normal representation of Joan of Arc.
No.
So it's interesting to see just for that. The rest of the church, I don't remember anything else. I was like, oh, what? What did they do here?
I really liked the port area. It just felt almost like there's two cities, and sometimes ports have sleazy reputations. This one didn't feel like that at all. No. And honestly, looking at the boats in the harbor, those are not sleazy people down there. Those were some nice boats.
All right. So tell me about the things that you learned about, because you've been to France many times. What did you learn about France this time that surprised you perhaps, or you weren't expecting?
I mean, I think the race surprised me. I knew Mark, my husband, would have a great time. I knew I would too. I love France. I love being in France every time we're there, no matter the reason. But I didn't think I would be so into the race and so excited. And also, even though I joked about feeling poor in Monaco, it's not like the people walking around were, just dropping money on the ground. Like everyone there just looked like a race fan. And that was cool. I'm sure we didn't see the super wealthy people because they were all sequestered away in their fancy hotel rooms or yachts. It just felt like you were among people who all shared a common interest, which was that's a fun feeling no matter what you're doing. And yeah, I just thought it lives up to its iconic status. It really lived up to it to me.
It's a fact that when you go to Monaco, it is the residence of many of the richest people in the world because they get a big tax break. You do not become a monégasque by chance. Most of them are not born there. They just somehow make nice with the prince and there's the passport. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And these are people who don't hang out with normal humans. So, they go from helicopter to the yacht to, they just you don't see them. Don't worry. You're not going to rub shoulder with them. And they might go to the Grand Prix, but they probably have a space that's just for them and the prince and people like that. So they stay between themselves.
I think a lot of people probably rent out their places for the race. I have to say, I had a lovely encounter with a man up in the old Monaco Ville, and he was Monegasque, and he's been there a long time. He seemed oblivious the race was even happening, but he was just having a pizza at this little kind of nothing cafe, and he struck up a conversation with us. His French was kind of broken French because he mostly spoke Italian. My French was, what it was, which is pretty good. He actually complimented me many times on how good my French was.
Yeah.
But we had such a nice conversation with him, but he was the only Monegasque I think we encountered the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say the only other thing I didn't learn, but it was reminded of, is that your advice of always just saying bonjour when you start up a conversation or go into a store or a cafe just continues to be the best advice because it works every time.
Yeah, and to me, it sounds obvious. Of course you say bonjour. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But it's true that in America, you don't. You just don't. You can just say, hey, or not even that.
You just walk in. Yeah. I've started to try and make a point of bringing that practice now that I'm back home. Just at least saying hello when I walk into a store because it's just nice. It also feels less awkward for me. I've acknowledged that I'm here.
Yes, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did I miss anything? Did we talk about all of the things that you enjoyed?
I think so.
Yeah, we talked about transportation. We talked about your favorite foods. We talked about your Airbnb. There's a Super Rue in Monaco. Who knew?
I know. And now I have my fancy reusable shopping bag from that store that says Super U Monte Carlo. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you have a link to the restaurant you liked, Cap d'Aille. Yeah, no, I think we got everything. So do you think you'll go back or are you going to go to other Grand Prix races?
Definitely want to go to other Grand Prix races. And Mark and I both said, oh, this is a, once in a lifetime trip. And then as soon as we were back, we said, I don't know about once in a lifetime. Maybe we'll have to go again. But I feel like we learned a lot of things that we would do slightly differently to enjoy it a little better next time.
So I'm so clueless. Where are the other Grand Prix?
They're all over the world. So even though we have one very close by here in Montreal, that would be the obvious choice. But that, of course, is not of interest to me. I'd rather go far away. There are 3 in the US now. There's a new one in Vegas this fall. But there's ones in Singapore, Australia, all over Europe. So there's Italy, Austria. Yeah, all over. I think there's 23 in the year.
So 23 of them. Okay. My godson is totally nuts about races and things like that. Years ago, he had a Twingo. So the little Renault car, that was all decked out for racing. It was the racing Twingo. But I mean, he babied that thing every weekend. He and his father would just work on that car to get it ready for the race. And I don't know whatever happened to that Twingo. But it's a whole culture. I mean, it's a real culture. People get into this and love it. And it's just as real as, I don't know, opera people.
What appeals to me is the opportunity to travel and see races in places that I haven't gone to. So we will be, figuring out what our next race is. And we always joke that now that we've gone to the most expensive, hardest race to go to, everything else seems like cheap.
Yeah. It's only 500. It's fine.
Yeah. No problem.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. It's been a delight to talk to you again. And you're the first to ever talk about the Grand Prix. So this is excellent. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Annie. Thank you.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for giving back and supporting the show. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Thank you all for supporting the show. Some of you have been doing it for many years. You are wonderful. And a shout out this week to new patrons: Amanda Rose, Alexis Butler, Dawn Jensler, Emily G. Adams. And for those of you joining now, take a look at the Collections tab in Patreon. It will make it easier for you to find previous Patreon rewards categorized by theme. So it's going to be cooking, history, it's going to be videos, things like that. To join this wonderful community of Francophiles, go to patreon.com/join us, Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. And to support Elise, go to patreon.com/EliseArt, ELYSART. This week I had my 4 Zoom meetings with patrons. I do this once a month. We have a meeting on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night in France time, and then one on Sunday morning for folks who are in the Pacific. This is, it's about me interacting with patrons directly, but it's also about fans of the show to talk to one another and learn from one another. I hope to see you at one of the Zoom meetings soon, and everyone who supports the show at $5 per month level gets an invite, so it's a pretty cheap ticket, really. The theme this month was active vacations in France. We talked about ways to organize walking, biking trips, and active vacations in France in general. Next month, the theme is going to be favorite French food. I'll talk about why I picked the recipes in my cookbook. Join us at the table, and you can tell me what your favorite French foods are. We'll discuss and perhaps talk about Thanksgiving coming up, some of the French things you can include into your own Thanksgiving table. We'll probably exchange recipes as well, I would bet. That will be October 20th, 21st, and 22nd of 2023. So, let's talk about Geneva. It was my husband's birthday, and he wanted to go to CERN. And neither of us had spent any time in Geneva. And there are direct flights from Toulouse to Geneva on EasyJet, so it's handy-dandy for a long weekend. I should add that if you're not starting from Paris, the train makes little sense for most of us. Paris to Geneva is 3 hours and 40 minutes, average, and there are 13 trains per day. But Toulouse to Geneva is anywhere between 7 and 9 hours by train. So it's not practical for a weekend. Driving would be about that much time as well, so we had to fly. We booked an Ibis near the train station in Geneva. The hotel was fine. It was a small room. The bed was not a brick, which is good. And it was clean, but there were hookers outside the door on a few occasions. That made me laugh. I mean, hookers have never done anything to me. It's train station. It's par for the course. Around the train station, there's going to be hookers. I'm more scared of drug dealers, and I know where there are hookers, there might be drug dealers, but I didn't see any. Why would we ever stay in that sort of place? Well, I didn't know about the hookers until I saw them. And Geneva is really expensive. I mean, a small meal and a drink, like, a small sandwich and a drink in Geneva is 20 francs. 20 francs is 22 euros, or probably about $20, more or less. For a sit-down meal and no wine, it'll be 40 francs per person. And the wine is ridiculously expensive. I saw a bottle of rosé. This is the same bottle I buy at Lidl in France for $3.50, and they were selling it for $16.70. Who are we kidding? I mean, come on. So Geneva is expensive. Bring all your cash and then some. But it's a lovely city. It's really clean, even around the hookers. A great transportation system. And it's free. If you ask your hotel to give you a pass for the length of your stay. So I called the hotel before we got there and I said, hey, I'd like the free transportation pass. And they did whatever they have to do. They sent in a request to the Geneva Tourism. And then Geneva's Tourism sent us a transport card for those 3 days. Totally free. But you have to know about it and you have to ask for it. They have all sorts of trams and buses in Geneva. It's really easy to get around. If you don't have to pay for it, it's fantastic. If you're not a tourist, it's Geneva prices, however, but we were just tourists. We walked around on our own in the city, some. It was nice. You see stuff, you take pictures, whatever. It was fine. We knew we wanted to visit CERN, and here I have to give you this tip. Go early. They only take 24 visitors per hour at CERN, and they make you stand in line to wait for your tickets. So if you show up and there are 60 people ahead of you, which is easy, it's a famous place, you'll wait in line for 3 hours just to get your tickets. And you'll need to stand the whole time. You'll need to stand there. You have to stay there in line the whole time. We got there around 10 a.m. and we stood in line for 2 hours. It was worth it. We loved our guided tour. but it would have been smarter to get there earlier. Lots of people give up on the guided tour because they don't want to stand there for so long. You cannot reserve in advance, and they don't explain how this works. So I'm going to tell you. When you're there, you see the line moving at last, and you think, oh, finally, great. But as soon as they handed out 24 tickets, the line stops and will not start moving again for a whole hour. It's not a great visitor experience, but it's free, So my husband and I took turns standing. There are some sofas around at least, Once the tour started, our tour guide was wonderful. She was a young researcher from South Africa who was clearly enthralled with the mission of CERN, a very smart person, and she helped us understand some things that we didn't know about before. And it's not every day a young black lady tells you about physics, right? It was wonderful. We loved it. I also loved sitting in the ball called Universe of Particles. It's very soothing and dreamy. At any rate, I loved CERN, but I strongly recommend that you get there between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. to save you standing in line forever. After CERN, we decided to look for a voice map tour of Geneva, and I'm so glad we did. A gentleman called Ariel Pierre Amerlet, I think. Amerlet? I'm not sure how he says it. He has 3 tours of Geneva, and they're all so good. I walked 2 of them. My husband walked a 3rd while I went to Annecy, but they are all fantastic. I really enjoyed the Geneva Left Bank tour, but really, they're all equally good. It turns out Geneva is the same as Paris. You can bumble around based on what you've read online. Oh, yes, I know I need to go to the Marais. Oh, great, I'll go to the Marais. But you'll miss all the best bits unless someone takes you there and tells you about them, takes you to the exact spot, and that's what Voice Map does. And I had an epiphany about restaurant reviews. I really think the reason why some restaurants get so many great reviews is that they are good at asking for reviews and not much else. I reserved 2 restaurants based on reviews, and the rest of the time we just went with our noses and eyes. And you know what? Our noses and eyes are better than the reviews because many restaurants get you a little tipsy. Of course, you're going to order some wine, right? And you're a little tipsy at the end. And then they bring you a QR code that you can flash with your phone. So you leave a review right there and then before you even leave the table. So pay attention to local foods, local prices, and trust yourself because those reviews really don't mean that much. Many thanks to Ellen Connert and Janice Davis for sending in a generous one-time donation by using the green button on any page on Join Us in France that says Tip Your Guide. Ellen wrote, Join Us in France is my favorite podcast. Every Sunday, I curl up in bed and luxuriate while listening to an episode. Your podcast is so illuminating about the wonders, the culture, the history, and the uniqueness of all things French. You do an incredible job, and I'm thrilled to be able to support the podcast. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen and Janice. So this is going to be a nice image in my head. I'm going to picture Ellen in bed listening to the podcast. That's fantastic. You can take advantage of my expertise as your personal itinerary consultant. I offer 2 levels of service. The Bonjour service, where we talk for an hour. You ask me all your questions. I give you some suggestions. And you're ready to make your decisions about whatever you were struggling with. You can also go with a VIP service, where we also talk for about an hour, but then I send you a detailed document that outlines everything we discussed, as well as a summary of the best advice shared on the podcast. To get started, purchase the service at joinusinfrance.com/boutique, and you'll get emails guiding you through the process. It's pretty simple. What about my voice map tours? Well, you can access my tours directly from the voice map app if you're in a hurry. But if you purchase the tour codes from joinusinfrance.com/boutique, you'll receive a special listener discount, but it's not immediate, and I do sleep. So give me a few hours before you panic that you didn't get your codes. This is very important, you have to download those tours while you're at home on Wi-Fi, because sometimes when you're roaming, it doesn't work as well. We experienced that in Geneva. So download at home. Don't do what I did. Don't make up your mind at the last minute. My thanks to podcast editors Anne and Christian Cotovan, who produced the transcripts. Please take a look at the website. It's chock full of very good information. And lots of people they email me and they ask me things that we've talked about on the podcast many times. And I get enough emails that I can't really answer all of them. I mean, I try to, but I can't. So search the website. You'll find all sorts of great stuff. Next week on the podcast, an episode with Elise about the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris. Bookworms will love this episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France travel podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2023 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.